Hey everyone, I got a ton of questions after I made my last video, so I wanted to answer them and also go over the new banner character Fortina. I'll jump right into it and start with Fortina. She heals, she shields, and she can counter. Also, at high level, she can grant unhindered to your damage dealer. As you would suspect, she's a good character and better than a lot of support options that we currently have. But the problem is there's a difference between being a good character and actually being useful to you. I'm well into chapter 11, and how much I can heal has only been a minor factor when determining whether I can win a hard fight or not. The unhindered buff is also kind of useless, because if you're going up against a debuffing enemy, you can usually just keep repeating the fight until you get good RNG. The only thing Fortina really has going for her is her shielding, but then you run into the issue of her not having enough speed to cast her shield before the enemy gets their hits in. If you can't tell by now, I don't think she's worth getting for most players, because existing supports are just fine, and Fortina needs rune investment to actually be useful. I got one copy of her, and she hasn't helped me clear a single piece of content so far. If you're free to play or a very low spender, then definitely don't get her, because she won't be fast enough to even help you out. I think the solution to a lot of the hard fights is to apply status effects to the trouble enemy or buff your own damage. Ideally, you want to be able to get the fight over with before the enemy has a chance to wipe you out. Stalling the fight usually doesn't work out from what I've seen. I really hope they make modifications to the combat system so the entire fight isn't determined in the first few rounds. Alright, let's go over the most common questions I've been asked. The first is, how do you know which limited character to go after? Well, whether you're free to play or a whale, you should only really go after a limited character if they're going to significantly help you, even at 1 or 2 copies. Fortina is a good example of someone who's fairly useless in practical terms if you don't have a lot of duplicates. And if they're good with low investment, then they're going to be really good if you whale out on them. In the future, I'll probably only go over characters that I think are incredibly good, because I imagine they'll put out a bunch of junk. The next question is, if I'm a dolphin, what level of VIP is worth getting? In my last video I said going up to VIP 3 is very worth it, no matter how much you spend on the game. However, if you're regularly spending money, then VIP 7 is what I'd aim for. This is when you start getting gold keys and you also collect some of these holy fragments. And you don't get that if you go to VIP 6. The next question is, how many duplicates of a character do you need to get to max them out? And I'm not going to whale to answer this question myself. I'm going to trust other people. I've seen charts that have shown you need 16 to max them out, and then I've seen tables like this which say you're going to need around 28, which is upwards of $5,000, I think, when I did the math. So basically, unless you're willing to spend big money, you should probably just focus on characters that you can get 1 to 2 copies of and be alright with. I think the most common question is, what's the best tier list out there, so I can focus on the best characters? Unfortunately, it's very hard, if not impossible, to make an accurate tier list for this kind of game. I can pretty much guarantee that any tier list out there is going to be useless aside from identifying what the good damage dealers are for each element. If you're not looking at damage dealers, then it gets complicated pretty quick. Some characters only work well in a specific spot in your team order, some characters' skills only pair well with certain other characters, some characters are just going to be plain useless in some fights because they're getting countered by the enemy. It's a convoluted mess. That's why I highly suggest checking out the unofficial subreddit for the game and its Discord, both of which I'll link in the description. The subreddit is quiet, but the Discord is busy basically all day. I'm not affiliated with either of these, I just think that they're good resources. Anyways, there's plenty of people out there who are more than happy to help you figure out viable teams if you're struggling, and you'd be better off getting tailored advice to your situation instead of relying on an ingenuine tier list. Alright, that's all the questions I wanted to cover in this video. I do intend to put out another video explaining what all the stats do and going more in depth into the battle system and showing you what endgame looks like, but it's probably going to take me about a week to get that far. Also, before I go, I want to remind you that gameplay for both free-to-play and whales is basically the same. You're going to progress until you hit a wall, and then you're going to have to wait or spend your way to overcome that wall. It's very easy to get tempted to spend, but I'd encourage you to temper your urges and just enjoy the game for what it is. The only thing whales really get out of the game that others don't is more dopamine hits from having more rolls. Anyways, if you had anything to add, let me know. And if you liked the video, please throw me a sub. Alright, later.